Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good morning. Before we start our discussion, let us read together Al-Fatihah. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to God, because with His permission, we can meet this time in a scientific forum on discuss one of the issues happening nowadays. Before that, I would like to welcome to our panel today. Hopefully, we will all gain useful knowledge from this forum. The topic of today's forum is issue and challenges in learning about MySay in our daily activities. Without further delay, I would like to introduce our four panelists. Well, the first panelist is Putri Isha. Putri Isha is an economic teacher at Changlan Secondary School. He has served approximately 3 years in the teaching field. Welcome, Miss. Next, the second panelist is Siti Nur Najihah. Miss Siti Nur Najihah is the Perlis State Director of Education. He has served in the State Education Department for 5 years. Welcome, Miss. For the third member of the panel, it seems to be a strong person, Miss Nur Ain. Miss Nur Ain is the Dean of University Utara Malaysia. He has served at University Utara Malaysia for about 6 years. Welcome, Miss. And lastly, he is a veteran in the field of education who has served for 10 years in the field. We welcome to Miss Norwadina. Welcome, Miss. Well, before we go to any further, let me first explain the topic of our forum today. As we all know, MySay is a form of game in which it is required that if one of the player wins, he will take the profit from the losing players. Example from MySay are also included in the gambling category that has been prohibited. To elaborate further, I leave it to our panel members. So, as the opener of our forum this time, I would like to ask a question to Miss Putri Isha. What exactly does this MySay means? Okay, Miss, can you explain?
Thank you, Miss Atira, for the question. Now I will explain more detail about the meaning of MySay. MySay is a type of game transaction in which there is requirement in the form of taking a certain amount of material from the losing party by the winner. In other words, the term MySay can be easily understood as gambling and betting. Besides being prohibited, MySay also include in the category of major sins. The relation between Gara and MySay is that Gara is general and MySay is specific. MySay happens when the risk and uncertainty is shifted to one party from the others. The general characteristic of MySay transaction is a speculative element in the form of collection of property from all players with the agreement that the winner will take all the property collected by the player. This action often use two different terms, namely MySay and Qimar. However, both refer to the same meaning with the following characteristic. First, Qimar and MySay were gambling in the Jahiliyah period, also called Juzur and Siham. The second, the essence of Qimar and MySay is to bet and compete with luck to produce a decision on who will win and lose the game of chance. MySay in financial content means the opportunity for a person to earn profit in a form of money. MySay is prohibited in Islamic finance because it creates wealth and chance instead of productive activity. That's all.
Okay, thank you for hosting our first panel. A very compact and clear definition. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, we acknowledge that MySay is a type of game transaction in which there is a condition in the form of the winner taking a certain amount of material for the losing party. In other words, Maisir is easily translated as gambling or betting. Okay? Well, it is well known that many of us are not aware that the action we take usually contain the element found in Maisir. My question to Miss Siti Nonajihah is, can the second speaker share a little bit about the element that lead to Maisir's actions? Okay, Miss Siti Nonajihah, can you explain?
Director for today. Okay, good question. Because nowadays many people still do not realize that their action contain Maisir. There are several elements that must be met in order for a transaction to be considered to contain Maisir, which are as firstly betting. In this game or competition, there is a fixed bet by the players. This bet can be in the form of money or other property, and sometimes that sport can bet as well. Of course, there are parties who benefit and parties who lose as a result of the bet. This is the most important factor determining whether an act can be classified as gambling or not. For example, betting in certain amount of money from supporters on a football game. Okay, secondly, game or competition. This action performed are usually in the form of game or competition, so it just done for fun or to feel free time to entertaining. So it's generally recreational, but the person should not participate in the game, but they could be a spectator or a person who bet against his bet in a game or competition. And lastly, profit. To win a competition or game is more dependent on speculative element or luck profit, or the winner factor obtained due to the habit or intelligence of players who are very accustomed or trained. I think that's all from me for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our second panel. Based on the explanation earlier, we can see that it's clear that betting, games or competition and the lack of profit are elements that must be met in order for a transaction to be considered to contain Maisir. The next question I will ask to Ms. Nur Ain. Can you relate wealth and economic development to this Maisir issue?
Okay, thank you very much for to our moderator for today's forum. So actually, in economy, we usually use the circular flow model, which is actually has demonstrated that money move from producer to household and back again to the endless loop. So all of the factor actually has led to result of a nation gross domestic product, which is GDP. And that normally we known as a national income. And according to the analyzing of a circular flow module, give the impact of GDP, which is at the same time could help the government, the central bank to adjust their monetary and fiscal policy, which is to improve our economy. And from the household perspective, actually the household sector engage in the consumption of spending, and they actually has contributed to an economic growth by working, and in return the household consume products and utilize. So actually the money flows that spent by the household to business consumer expenditure in exchange for goods and services produced by the business is it will flow back from the business to household for their labor activities, and all of this is actually the most basic thing that involve only two sector of the circular flow model. However, from the Islamic economic perspective, which is regarding to our topic today, which is related to gambling activities, are totally prohibited in Islamic economy. Why? Because we all know that gambling is restricted which involve gaming activity of betting and the chances of winning or losing from the both side. So actually, Islamic ruling pertaining legal and illegal income earnings. So some people nowadays they neglecting the sources of income, which is it actually a sad phenomenon, which is a large number of Muslim nowadays they cannot differentiate between the legal and illegal earnings. So they might involve in the undesirable things such as money from the gambling activity or the money from cheating or stealing. So can you guys just imagine, even though the winner of the prizes from gambling activities spend their money in economy, which is follow the circular flow model and boost the economy, but the sources of the money actually is from illegal earnings. So this is actually not allowed in Islamic economy, because we all know that the aims of Islamic economic system is to achieve al-falah, which is the balance between material and spiritual well-being. So if the person get the money from the illegal sources, such as the topic we discussed today, which is gambling, then it's actually opposite from the objective of Islamic economy itself. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to Miss Nur Ain. It's clear with the explanation given by the Miss that we can see. Okay. Well, from Wadina view, as a person with more experience in the field of education, can you give me an application that can be related to the MyShare issue?
Okay. So thank you to Miss Atira for the question. I agree with the opinion explained by Speaker 3 about MyShare in the view of Islamic economy. Well, to continue our topic, I will explain in more detail how the act of MyShare can happen in everyday life. It has been established through the explanation of Speaker 1, 2 and 3 that Islamic economies do not permit or forbid the act of MyShare gambling, regardless of whether it take the form of money or a transfer. If a transaction contain an element of gara, then that element by itself also constitute gambling. However, if we see that people, regardless of their profession, social circle or that state of the economy, are careless and complacent with the action they take, such as incorporating MyShare into their daily life. The question is how the act is considered acceptable in everyday life. I will explain one by one the action that can bring the element of MyShare. The first, when there is a property, bet or lotto that come from both parties who gamble. To start, we play a game to determine the winner and the loser. The winning parties get the property stake, while the loser will lose his property. For example, in the Jahiliyyah period, gambling was done by filling a bowl with gold meat that was slaughtered in the name of the common participant to leave the pool. There are 9 balls, but there are only 6 balls, while the rest of the balls are empty. After the balls are shaken in a sack while they call ribaba, then one by one the balls are removed. If empty balls is found, the person concerned must pay for the purchase of the good. While the example in modern time where the MyShare element occurs in insurance companies, where every insurance holder is eligible to claim a claim when hit by an accident, regardless of whether the insurance holder is a new or old member and has just paid a little for insurance. Such thing will be more profitable for the holder. On the contrary, if until the end of the increment nothing happened, while it has paid the insurance in full, then the insurance company will get more profit, and when the insurance holder for the certain reason cancel the contract before the receive period that will not receive back the money that has been paid, except for a small part event the money will be returned. Because the component of masjid exists in the Jahiliyyah period as well as its modern time, people mistakenly believe that it is innocent act. However, as stated in Surah Haram continue to be haram, Al-Ma'idah, verse 19 which, oh, you have faith, alcohol consumption, gambling, idol worship and drawing lots while around all disturbing activity that also involve the devil. So avoid doing anything that might make you lucky. Muslims who are tolerant should not allow themselves to be fooled by things that emanate evil from God. So that's all from me.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Thank you to Miss Madina for the explanation that was quite good for our. As we already know, Islamic economy does not allow or prohibit maisir, which is gambling, regardless of whether it is in the form of money or transfer. If a transaction contains an element of gara, then the element itself is also gambling. So, we can see from the application explained by Miss Wadina that is very closely related to the current issue. What are the current issue related to the mindset issue that can be linked today? I address this question to our first panelist, which is Miss Puan Putri Isha. Okay, Miss.
Thank you, Miss Atira, for the question. The issue for Maisir is what happened in Malaysia nowadays is buying and selling in a cedok form. So, Imam Al-Qurtubi explains that buying and selling is in general form, but at the same time, it is also specific, which is accepted from things that are prohibited from Sharia perspective. Therefore, all forms of buying and selling are obligatory, but they can turn into makruh or haram due to the existence of the elements that are not allowed in Sharia, such as gharar and maisir, in the transaction carried out. So, we as a Muslim must stay away from the transactions that are prohibited in Islam. In Islam, buying and selling consists of three main pillars, namely contracting parties, ijab and kabul, and contracted object. For each of the pillars, there are several conditions that affect the validity of the contract. Mentioning about the pillars, which is the goods and price that are contracted, the condition of the third pillar is the goods for sale must be known by both parties and seller and buyer. Therefore, it is not allowed in Islam to sell goods whose actual and physical are unknown, such as I'm selling one of the shoes in the box. This is because this type of business had an element of excessive ambiguity and can lead to disputes and fight between seller and buyer. For buying and selling in cedok, it contains several elements that are prohibited by Sharia, such as gharar, maisir, also the element denying the right of qiyar. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Miss Putri Isha. Maybe Miss Siti Nonajiha would like to make a little bit addition about this maisir issue that same with the cedok transaction from different aspect and angle. Please, Miss.
Okay. Returning to the question asked, we realize that buying and selling by scoping as mentioned above is similar to buying and selling mulasama and munabaza. It is included in the prohibited buying and selling since it contains element of gharar, jahalah and gambling. It is maisir. Besides that, it is seen as it if depend solely on luck and denying to the buyer the right to choose the good they desire and like at a price commensurate with what they have paid. This situation has violated the buying and selling principle. They should exist such as care. Okay, back the issues today. The element of mindset is gambling. Imam Al-Mawardi mentioned the definition of gambling, which is a competition that's made the parties involved definitely wins or take or loss hand over the stock price. As can be seen, this buying and selling transaction contain element of gambling in that there are profit and loss. Is the value of the good is still than the price paid by the buyer. The buyer is the one who lost and vice versa. Alright, the kind of transaction the scene have been an element of gambling because the goods sold are not clear and there is an act of denying the wishes of one of the party. Citing a quote from Al-Fiqh Al-Mahanji, buying and selling that contain element of gambling include buying and selling that does not clearly state the good or there is an act that denies the wishes of one of the party. That's all from me.
Okay, thank you to Miss Siti Nurhajiha. Very good answer were given by both our winners. Besides that, we certainly know from the mindset issue that means cedok transaction mentioned that it must have some effect on society or the country if it is done continuously. What is the Miss Nur Ain view on this situation? Can you explain?
Okay, thank you very much, Nur Atira, our moderator for today's forum. So, actually a good question. So, as we know, even in the Quran, that the word of Maisir itself, which is gambling, appears in the Quran almost 3 times, that means gambling actually is a prohibited activity in Islam. That's totally prohibited. So the impact from the issue, which is the cedok transaction, which is mostly similar with other kind of gambling games, which is gambling will destroy the family institution because of the loss of wealth and the hatred among the players. So they actually consuming from one another wealth, which is unlawful. And the gambling actually is a sinful hobby that wastes time and effort, which is make people become, and they actually get used to laziness. Why? Because it will stop ummah, which is Muslim, from working, as they like to spend their time and their money in gambling. By the way, I'm going to explain from Islamic economy perspective, which is it will increase the unemployment rate, which is one of the impact of gambling activities, which is toward of the economy, which is increase the unemployment rate. Because people, when they are involved with gambling, they are not interested to work because they think that they will get the money and from the gambling activity, and this will increasing the trend of unemployment rate, will also lead to consequences of employment, which could involve loss of potential national output and waste of resources, and thus the employment trend may have a negative effect on long-term rent aggregate in supply, and thereby could damage our economic growth potential. And at the same time, the impact of gambling activity will lead to increase in social costs. The rising of number unemployment rate is actually linked to social deprivation. For example, the amount of cases of crime and social exclusion, which include the increase of divorce rate and family problems, especially when the causes of unemployment is because of the gambling activities. That's all for me.
Thank you to Miss Nur Ain for her explanation just now. My last question of the day, and I want to hear from our fourth panel, which is Miss Wadina. Can you give a little bit about how individual and communities can deal with this issue, and can you give a lesson that can be taken from this issue? Okay, Miss.
Okay, well, thank you to moderator Miss Atira. I will continue with how to overcome my state action. The fundamental of purchase and selling given by Islam should be studied by every seller in order to resist this buyer and seller scam. According to what I have learned from speaker 1, 2 and 3, this is so that both buyer and seller can behave properly, tend to the Islamic approach to commerce. As far as we are aware, purchase and selling cedok is already illegal and unfair, and the seller will benefit more as a result. You see that this buying and selling transaction include a gambling element where some parties tend to gain and some parties tend to lose. The party that lose money is the buyer if the scope value is still less than the price the buyer paid. Also the upside. Due the ambiguity of the community being sold and the act of refusing one party request. This type of buying and selling is to include a gambling element. From here, I want to quote from the book of Fiqh al-Mahaji, which means selling that contain element of gambling include buying and selling that do not clearly state the goods being sold, or there is an act that denies the will of one of the parties. Therefore, buying and selling cedok is seen as having elements that are profit by Shira as masses, gambling and denying the buyer dictionary right. Because of that, buying and selling cedok is illegal according to Sharia. Traders are advised to use sale methods that are free from elements that are profit by Sharia to ensure that the profit obtained is halal. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you for the explanation and argument given by you. And I also thank all three members of our panel today for being willing to be present and willing to voice their opinion. May what we get today provide me some enlightenment and useful input for us. Okay. Finally, it seems that time is very jealous of us. So let me give a little summary that we can make today. Today is that my share is prohibited because my share is a type of game transaction in which there is a requirement in the form of the winner taking a certain amount of material from the losing party. Besides that, buying and selling cedok transaction is seen as having element prohibited by Sharia, such as maisir, which is gambling, and then denying the buyer's right to discretion. As a result, Sharia prohibited the purchase and sales of cedok. Okay, regards until our next meeting. Finally, I will reveal the poems. Orang Putih, Orang Pakistan. Terima kasih, syukran jazilan. Okay, that's all for the forum. Thank you.